We are really blessed to have today with us Lieutenant General, U.S. Marine Corps, Brian Cavanaugh. He is now serving in many commanders' roles, which includes Commanding General of Fleet Marine Force Atlantic, Commander of Marine Forces Command, as well as Commander Marine Forces Northern Command. General Cavanaugh, thank you for taking the time with everything you have going on right now and so many responsibilities to be in this important conversation on moral leadership.
Oh, thank you for having me today. There's nothing more important that I would be doing right now than to be with the Howe Institute for Society to talk about this. It's an imperative for our country. It's an imperative for really the world to have these types of conversations to make sure that our foundation that our forefathers set is unchanged.
You are an East Coast native of Baltimore, Maryland, who graduated at the Naval Academy class of 1990, mechanical engineering, tough major, and you did well also going on to be a naval aviator in 1992. 2026-27, you also were a commander leading your squadron into Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. During that deployment, your squadron earned the Outstanding Squadron of the Year, and 3 people also recognized for excellence. Just start at the beginning to tell us maybe a little bit about your upbringing, the people who have influenced and guided and encouraged you on your journey. Maybe even like, how is it that you became a Marine and pursued military service as your way of contributing?
If you take my career, if you asked me in high school when I was a senior if I was going to go in the military, my answer would have been no. But I have a wonderful, loving mother, and I was raised by a single mother, and she had a drive that she put in all of her children of education and service. And she encouraged me to go to apply for the Naval Academy. I had intended to go to Duke, and I was a lacrosse player and a wrestler, and I received a partial scholarship to go to Duke. And I didn't know Duke had a ROTC program. So it was just to go to Duke, become an engineer, and wrestle and play lacrosse. She encouraged me to apply to the Naval Academy and go on a different path. And I have loved it ever since. And here I am 38 years later, still serving. So inspiration, my mother, that's the only one person, no one else, my guidance counselors, no one else was talking about this type of service to me. I attribute it all to my mom.
You honor your mom in that response. And I just want to follow up. You made a comment that said, oftentimes we look at the senior leaders, the generals, colonels, and sergeant majors as the leaders. But I believe we get our inspiration from the juniors. What have you learned about leadership from the junior people on your team that will help us evolve in our thinking about leadership and moral leadership?
I think when I said that, and I still believe it to this day, that was probably 1998 when I said that, it's the young people that inspire me to make sure that I live up to the standards of my service, morally, mentally, and physically. So when I see a young lance corporal, corporal, lieutenant, I teach or a values conversation. There's espoused values. Those things we say in all the service, honor, courage, commitment. We say Marines take care of Marines. And then there's operating values, those things that you do. And I teach them that there can be no gap between the two. So if you're going to say something, Marines take care of Marines, you must do it. And for me to say that, I have to do that. And when I look at the young people, when I was a captain and they were junior, or now lieutenant general and they're junior, I feel compelled to live up to the standard, live up to the espoused values that I say, that my service says, so that they have the model of what right looks like morally, mentally, and physically.
And beautifully said. And we often talked about those espoused values and those lived values, right? So what is it that we say and what is it that we do? And that is a beautiful summation on how important it is that we bring those two together. How has your leadership framework changed over the years? In your journey since 1990, graduating from the Naval Academy to today. Tell us about maybe a circumstance or something that has changed how you approach your espoused values and also how you live those in your own leadership.
I continually read books to this day to learn and grow. And I read a lot of books about people, because we're in the people business. When we talk about moral leadership, it's a and you talk about humanity, you're talking about people, and we're humans first. Before we don on our uniform, we're going to take these uniforms off, and I just try to understand and know people, learn what's in their heart. Uh, I try to get past the facade of how well they scored on a fitness test and understand the values and beliefs that they were raised. What is their story? And I dig deep and I try to understand and learn everyone to that level, so I can help them.
It's beautiful. I mean, you bring into so many aspects of the moral leadership journey in terms of seeing the humanity in everybody, but also, you're talking a lot about the principle of self-improvement. I think it'd be great for our listeners to learn from you. How do you pause, take a time out? Dov Seidman talks about when we pause a machine, it stops. When we pause a human being, we begin. And so specifically, when it comes to taking a pause, how do you use that pause to evaluate your own leadership and learning journey?
Whether it's a spiritual or a physical, everyone has to find their their way to re-energize. And for me, that's generally through physical fitness. And post fitness, I sit in the sauna and I can just think. And I need that time to just think. And I embrace that. If you're on my staff, you see my schedule and it's purposeful. I'll block off no less than an hour and a half during lunch, and I won't eat lunch. I go to the gym, and I want the Marines and sailors to see me in the gym working out, even at this age. And I just think it's important, and I use that fitness opportunity for me to recharge. Like I know what my strengths are, and I also know what my weaknesses are, and I work on my weaknesses to try to build on them. And during that time of thinking, I assess and make sure that I'm trying to do that. The other piece is for the same process for the people you lead. So if you have subordinate people that work for you, they're going through that same thing. And what I try to do is I try to help them. I want to, like I say, dig down deep into their heart and understand what their weaknesses are. And it's not to get them in trouble; it's to help them grow and help them solve those. Because their natural tendency isn't to show me those weaknesses; they want to show me their strengths. They want, I want to see the good scores but that human side. We all know that there are weaknesses.
You have a quote that says, "Be yourself. Don't change because your rank changes, and to treat people the way you want to be treated. The golden rule applies regardless of whether you're in uniform or out of uniform," which is a fabulous quote. Expand on that a little bit for us about why humility and humanity are so important in effective moral leadership.
I have to tell you, I sometimes forget what rank I have on my collar because it's not about that. And I looked at, oh yeah, I'm a lieutenant general. Right? It's we're humans, human interaction, golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated. It's so simple, yet so complicated for some. And everywhere I've gone, it's just if you could find folks that I've served with 35 years ago, they'll say the same. I think I'm the same person, and my rank has changed over the years. And I no kidding, forget sometimes. I look down and go, "Oh yeah, when did that happen?" Right, it was like a year ago or something. But uh, it's not that important. It's important in the functions of our duties, but in the broader uh, scope of humanity, these don't mean as much as how you treat someone when they walk away from you. If they felt good about the conversation, um, if they felt good about that interaction, that is way more important than giving an order or executing something.
So where do you personally find the moral courage to do the right thing, even when those decisions are inconvenient, difficult, maybe even detrimental to yourself, your leadership, your reputation? And maybe give us an example of a time when you had to make a tough choice.
Sure.
And how you made that decision.
Yeah, my approach is always to do the right thing, always to do the right thing, period. Um, Sometimes you hear people talk about command and the burden of command. Uh, it's never been that way for me. And I've never worried about that next promotion. I've never worried about that. I try to create an environment where I have the best information possible because I've allowed all the individuals who have some knowledge and expertise and some play in this to have a voice. And in the billets I've had, if I'm the commander, I'm comfortable making that decision and I sleep easy at night. I've been asked, what keeps you up at night? Nothing keeps me up at night. I sleep very well. I don't have hard decisions. I just have decisions because the foundation, the moral foundation is always you must do the right thing, regardless of the outcome. My recommendation is not to worry about what the next uh, right thing is, just make the right decision. And how do you have a foundation to make good decisions? What is your method or your methodology to ensure that you have the best information? You can sit in your office and read a package and go through it by yourself. You can bring your XO, your deputy into the room, or you can have a larger crowd. I mean, find the means to which you can continually make right decisions. And life is so much easier that way.
Yeah, I see. I hear the collaboration there, but also the sense of accountability for you personally in your role there and fostering an environment that creates the opportunity to hear from others. You've said, and I want to share a quote with our listeners, a great quote. If you ask someone to define what leadership is, you'll get 1,000 different answers. Part of it is the individual and what they're capable of, what they believe they're capable of, and trying to find the best inside of someone and helping them get to that point. So this is a kind of a question for our listeners to deep into your wisdom of what are the characteristics of a good leader? How do you foster and encourage those qualities in the Marines you lead, but also in people that are trying to make an influence and a positive difference in this world?
Yeah, so I'd say for the listeners, and the Marine Corps has a great listing of leadership traits and principles. And we have this acronym JJD type buckle. So these 14 leadership traits is what we instill in Marines as they come in. So everyone's raised under, a certain value system, right? And when we bring in young men and women, we try to give them a foundation. We talk about honor, courage, and commitment as core values. And then we provide 14 leadership traits and principles for them to understand of what's most important for our service. And those 14 leadership traits, you just named them all: justice, judgment, dependability, integrity, decisiveness, tact, initiative, endurance, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, enthusiasm. But one's missing, and it's empathy. And that's the one that I would add to that list. And again, because of my background, it's clear for me to try to understand others' background. It ties to the golden rule. But I think if you can really walk in others' shoes, understand where they are trying to get to, you can help them get there. And every time you help someone in your unit gets better. So I think empathy is one of the keys to that from from a moral leadership perspective. And I think it's often ignored. It's not in our JJD type buckle, all the acronyms for that. But there's one key that's helped me in my journey.
It's wonderful. And I appreciate you bringing that up because moral muscle is a key part of the Howe Institute for Society and practicing that. And empathy, a lot of people don't understand that that's like an exercise of really understanding others' feelings, leaning into others' perspectives, and it requires incredible listening and care and compassion. What do you think is the biggest morality-based leadership dilemma that we're facing today? And maybe partner with that, what the best strategy might be to spread and protect moral leadership around the globe, around the world?
Well, I think in part to a question you asked earlier that I didn't probably fully answer would be the time that I had to display moral courage. And I'll answer this in part in that, sometimes you're not in a position where it's you're not in charge. It's not your turn, right? Uh, but you have a voice and you have a foundation. and you can display moral courage. So there was a time when I was a major and I was not a commander. And then, there's things that were going on, and I felt I had to display moral courage and say something about it. And I did. But it was his command, it was his authorities, it was his call. And you just have to recognize that. And you have options at that point. You either, uh, can shut up and color, or you can actually, if it's grievous enough, do more other things about it. So when you talk about allies and partners, with different cultures and different those it is a complex question, but that is where, you just have to understand your position, your billet, your authorities, and do you want to, is it egregious enough that you're going to take it to a level of more than it needs to be? In the incident that I described, it wasn't. I said what I wanted to say. I slept easy that night. The decision was made different than what I would have made if I were the commander. But the key, I think, in that is that, you know, if you are around and you become the commander, you can set a different tone and present a different model. So I'll say the challenge in the navigation of that is whether you're a CEO in a company or military leader, it doesn't matter. Display the moral courage when you have. If you have the authority to do something about it, you should. If you don't, you have a decision to make. Is it egregious enough that you either want to leave that organization or that company, or wait your turn and present a different model for those that you are leaving?
One last question, if you don't mind. And this is more like, what do you share as your wisdom, guidance, recommendation for emerging moral leaders, Marines and young people and people who are trying to create with us this wave of moral leadership? What is your advice for the leadership journey ahead for both moral leadership and also moral authority?
Well, first thing I'd say is, like you mentioned before, do not change who you are. That's step one. You are who you are. Do not try to be someone you're not. And, you know, there's a quote when I was a young man that, and I don't know who I could attribute it to, but it says that 10 most powerful two-letter words. And it was, if it is to be, it is up to me. And that kind of has always sat with me. And what I've tried to do is present the best me I can at every chance I have. And what I mean by that is I don't worry about the outcome. If there's someone making a decision and it's pick me or pick someone else, I just want it to be the hardest decision that individual has to make. And there are things that are in my control and things that aren't. Those things that are in my control, I work on, and that's moral, mental, physical. And if you have a strong foundation and all that, I would strongly recommend to just continue to hone those skills through reading, through activities, through networks, organizations like this, and just continue to learn, be who you are, and present the best you, and don't worry about that next right thing. Always do the right thing all the time, and you're going to be fine.
We just are so grateful for you, for your role, for taking on the commitment of being not only a moral leader, but also fulfilling a position of moral authority. Thank you so very much for your time, for your talent, for your tenacity, and for your wave making along with us. We salute you and we're grateful to you. And we are blessed to have had you as part of our How Conversation podcast series. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Howe Institute for Society for having this forum to have these type of discussions. It's probably the most important thing that we can discuss in this day and age, I think. I think it impacts not just military, but our entire country and the entire world. And I could talk about this every day if we had the opportunity. I do within my command and within the authorities that I have, and I try to set the example for others that are coming behind me. Thank you very much.